It started with a simple knock at the door, nothing dramatic, nothing out of the ordinary. Just a regular weekday afternoon, with sunlight spilling through the windows and the usual quiet of the house. My husband had asked his friend to stop by and help fix a few things around the place, just some shelves, a broken cabinet hinge, maybe the loose kitchen tap. It was supposed to be harmless, routine. But now, looking back, I realize that knock was the beginning of something I can't take back, something I can't tell anyone. I had always known my husband's friend, Jason, in that casual, distant way. We'd seen each other at gatherings, barbecues, birthdays. He was polite, helpful, always a bit more charming than he needed to be, but nothing that raised any red flags. At least not then. My husband trusted him. I trusted him. That day, he showed up with a small toolbox and a smile, like someone doing a favor, no big deal. He wasn't even supposed to stay long. I remember how normal it all felt at first. We made small talk while he tightened screws and tested drawer handles. I offered him coffee, and we laughed about how clumsy my husband was with anything mechanical. But as the hours passed, something shifted. I wish I could explain it better, but it was subtle, like the air in the room changed. His compliments felt just a little too personal. His eyes lingered longer than they should have. And I didn't stop it. That's the part one struggle with most. It wasn't dramatic or loud or planned. It happened quietly, like a line being slowly crossed without anyone realizing until it was too late. And once it happened, I froze. Because suddenly, I was in a place I didn't expect to be, facing emotions I hadn't felt in years: confusion, guilt, fear. It didn't matter how or why it started. It had happened. And now I couldn't tell anyone. Not my husband. Not my closest friend. No one. What do you do when something that's supposed to be innocent turns into a secret you can't carry? How do you look at the man you love and know you've betrayed him, even if it wasn't part of the plan? Every time I see Jason now, even in passing, it's like my heart drops. He acts like nothing happened. Like we're still just people who once shared a joke over a leaky faucet. But I can't shake the weight of it. The shame. The fear of what would happen if the truth came out. And the scariest part? I'm not even sure if Jason would care. Or worse, if he wanted this to happen all along. This is my story. One I never thought I'd tell. A true story of infidelity, trust, and silence. And it all began with a simple visit from my husband's friend. What happened next changed everything. Jason wasn't just some casual friend from my husband's past. They'd known each other since college, roommates back in the day, practically brothers. He was around even before I met my husband, part of the group that stuck together through thick and thin. So when my husband asked him to come help out around the house while he was away on a short work trip, it didn't feel strange. In fact, I remember thinking how lucky we were to have someone we could trust like that. I never planned on being alone with him for long. I thought he'd stop by, tighten a few things, maybe grab a quick lunch if it worked out, and then go. But things kept dragging out. One task led to another. He stayed for hours, and with each one, I noticed things I hadn't before. The way he looked at me when I laughed. The way he brushed close, but made it seem accidental. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. That I was reading too much into harmless moments. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It was small things that started chipping away at my sense of comfort: him complimenting my perfume, asking about my relationship in a way that felt a little too curious. He said things like, "Do you ever miss being wild?" with a half-smile that made my stomach twist. I laughed it off, changed the subject, but those words stuck. They echoed in my mind long after he left that evening. And yet, I didn't say a word to my husband when he called that night to check in. I couldn't. Not because anything had fully happened yet, but because something had shifted, and I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know what I was becoming part of. The days that followed were strange. I couldn't stop thinking about Jason, not in a romantic way, but in a way that unsettled me. It was like a part of me had been jolted awake, and I didn't like the feeling. I started second-guessing every little interaction from that day. Was I too friendly? Did I smile too much? Was there something I could have done differently to stop the weird energy before it started? But even those thoughts didn't feel like answers. They only made the guilt grow heavier. Meanwhile, my husband came back from his trip, tired but happy to be home. He hugged me like he always did, joked about the hotel food, and asked if Jason had been helpful. I lied. I smiled and told him everything went fine. That Jason fixed the shelves and the cabinet like a pro. I even left out the part where he stayed late. Because I was afraid of what that might sound like. I was afraid of what it might mean. The real conflict wasn't even just between Jason and me. It was inside me. A constant push and pull between right and wrong, silence and truth. And then things took another turn. Jason started texting me. At first, just casual things, hope the kitchen faucet's still holding up. Or tell your husband I owe him a coffee next time. But then the messages became more personal. Subtle, but loaded. Things like, I haven't stopped thinking about our conversation. There was no outright threat, no obvious line crossed. But the tone, it carried something dangerous. Something I didn't know how to handle. I found myself deleting his texts before my husband could see them. My heart would race every time my phone buzzed. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. I thought maybe if I ignored Jason's messages, he'd back off. I tried to act normal, focus on my routine, pretend like that day never happened. But the more I avoided him, the more persistent he became. He started showing up unexpectedly, once outside the grocery store, another time near the coffee shop I always stopped by after work. He always had some casual excuse for being there, always smiling like nothing was wrong. But behind that smile, I could feel something else, pressure. A silent threat that kept tightening around me. One evening, my husband mentioned planning a small get-together at our place. Just a few friends, nothing big. Jason said he's free too, he said, pouring himself a glass of water like it was no big deal. My heart dropped. I didn't know how to respond without sounding suspicious. I just nodded and forced a smile, but inside, panic was building. I couldn't tell him not to invite Jason. That would only lead to questions I wasn't ready to answer. The night of the gathering arrived faster than I expected. Our living room filled with laughter and music, everyone catching up, having drinks. But I couldn't focus. I kept catching Jason's eyes across the room, watching me, reading me. At one point, he cornered me in the hallway, just out of sight from the others. He leaned in close, his voice low but sharp. You're not going to pretend this didn't happen, are you? I froze. My chest tightened, my hands shook. Before I could say anything, someone called my name from the other room, and Jason stepped back like nothing had happened. But I knew, this wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a ticking clock. And something was about to break. The party ended late, and I barely remembered who left when. I stayed up after my husband went to bed, just staring at the empty hallway where Jason had confronted me. His words kept playing in my head, you're not going to pretend this didn't happen, are you? What did he mean by that? Was he going to say something? To my husband? To someone else? The fear of being exposed was crushing, but there was something worse brewing now. Jason wasn't just holding a secret. He was starting to use it. 2 days later, it happened. My husband came home from work early, holding his phone, his expression tight. I could feel the air shift as soon as he walked in. He didn't speak right away. Just handed me the phone. There, on the screen, was a message from Jason. Except it wasn't a message meant for my husband. It was a screenshot of our earlier conversation. Not explicit, not proof of anything physical, but it was suggestive. Enough to raise suspicion. Enough to create cracks in my marriage. I don't get it, my husband said slowly, trying to stay calm. Why would Jason send this to me? I had no answer. I stood there, frozen, every word I wanted to say locked in my throat. Jason had crossed a line I never saw coming. This wasn't just tension or secrecy anymore. It was control. Manipulation. And I realized I had completely underestimated him. He didn't want silence, he wanted power. And now he had it. The worst part? My husband still trusted him more than he trusted his own instincts. He kept defending him, saying, maybe it's just a joke. Maybe he sent it by mistake. And all I could do was nod, pretending to believe it too, while inside, my world was unraveling. Jason was no longer just a friend. He was a threat. And if I didn't act fast, I was going to lose everything. My marriage, my peace, my reputation. But how do you fight back when someone holds your secret like a weapon? When the line between the truth and the lies is already blurred? The next move had to be mine. But I didn't know what that move was yet. All I knew was that things had gone too far. And Jason, he wasn't finished. Not even close. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing. Jason had crossed the final line. He wasn't just trying to shake me anymore, he wanted to destroy everything I had left. And if I stayed quiet any longer, I was giving him that power. I realized I had only one option left, I had to confront him. The next day, I texted Jason and told him to meet me at the cafe near the edge of town. Somewhere public. Somewhere safe. He showed up with that same smug smile, like he already knew he'd won. But I was done playing scared. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, you need to stop. Whatever you think this is, it's over. I'm telling my husband the truth tonight. Everything. For a moment, he just stared at me, stunned. Then he leaned back and laughed like it was all a game. You think he'll believe you over me? You think he'll forgive you? Go ahead. Burn your perfect little life down. But here's the twist, what Jason didn't know was that my husband was already sitting at a nearby table, watching everything. I had texted him earlier and asked him to trust me one last time. I didn't tell him what he was walking into, only that I needed him to hear the truth with his own ears. He did. He heard it all, Jason's arrogance, his manipulation, the threats. When Jason finally saw him, his face went pale. My husband stood up and walked over without saying a word. He didn't hit him, didn't yell. He just looked him dead in the eyes and said, we're done. Don't ever come near my wife, or our lives, again. Jason didn't even try to argue. He just walked out, fast, like he couldn't get away quick enough. And for a moment, I thought that was the end. But the final twist? A few days later, I received an anonymous email. No name, no message, just a photo. A blurry shot of me and Jason talking in that hallway during the party. I don't know who took it. Or why. But one thing was clear, someone else knew. And suddenly, I realized, this secret might not be buried yet. The photo shook me. Even after Jason was gone and the truth was out, this one image felt like a final test. A reminder that sometimes, even when you think you've closed a chapter, something lingers in the shadows. I stared at that blurry hallway shot for hours, trying to figure out who could have taken it. A guest from the party? Someone just passing by at the wrong time? Or worse, someone who had been watching all along. But nothing else followed. No more emails. No more threats. Just silence. And slowly, that silence became healing. After everything, my husband and I had long, painful conversations, more honest than we'd ever had before. I didn't defend myself. I didn't make excuses. I just told him the truth, the whole story, even the parts that hurt. He listened. And while it took time, we both decided not to let one mistake, one twisted moment, define everything we had built together. It wasn't easy, but we chose to rebuild, piece by piece. Jason disappeared from our lives completely. Blocked, erased, gone. Whatever he thought he had on us lost its power the moment we brought everything into the light. Secrets only control you when they live in silence. And we were done being silent. Looking back now, I've realized something important. Infidelity isn't always about what happens physically. Sometimes, it starts with a boundary being blurred, with trust cracking slowly under pressure. Emotional betrayal can feel just as heavy. But healing begins the moment we stop running from the truth and start owning it. This experience taught me that protecting your marriage doesn't always mean pretending everything is perfect. Sometimes, it means walking through the fire together, even when it's uncomfortable. It's choosing honesty over fear. Clarity over confusion. To anyone listening who may be hiding a secret or sitting in silent guilt, you're not alone. But trust can only grow in truth. And sometimes, telling the hardest part of your story is the very thing that sets you free. This was my true story of infidelity, trust, and a moment that nearly broke everything. But in the end, it became a story about growth, forgiveness, and learning to never give someone else the power to write your ending.